My friend, the Apple Valley Inn. When I met the Apple Valley Inn in 1968, it was Roy Rogers' Apple Valley Inn. I'm Randy Andrew. I've been an entertainer all my life, and I don't think it would have been possible, especially here in California, had I not met the Apple Valley Inn. The inn was built in 1948, same year I was. It helped Apple Valley, California grow into what it is today. If you stayed at the Apple Valley Inn and laid out by the swimming pool, you might see some famous faces like Marilyn Monroe, Steve Reeves, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Janet Leigh, and you might even see Superman George Reeves riding his bicycle out of the front of the Apple Valley Inn. And of course, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Now, I was growing up in Indiana at that time. I was just a kid, and I watched Roy Rogers' show every week, every Saturday morning.
The Roy Rogers Show, starring Roy Rogers, King of the Cowboys, Trigger, his golden palomino, and Dale Evans, Queen of the West.
Roy Rogers was my hero in the 1950s, so I wanted to have what Roy did, a horse and two guns. So my parents, my loving parents, got me two guns and a horse. Well, not really my horse. It was the horse that went around the neighborhood and that little kid sat on it with cowboy hats. In 1968, I joined the Air Force, and I was stationed at George Air Force Base in Southern California. Well, I found out quickly that it was only about 15 miles from Apple Valley, California, and in Apple Valley was Roy Rogers Museum. Of course, I went to see it. Then I found out that across the street from the museum was the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn. So I went across the street and walked into the Apple Valley Inn. Had a beautiful lobby. I saw a poster in the lobby. It read, Fannie's Forum, live from the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn, KVR Radio 960. The radio station was located in the inn itself. And in that picture was Bob Hope, Shirley Eaton, Jonathan Winters, and Phyllis Diller. And the lady that had the show was Fannie Dunnicliff. I later found out that Fannie was a stage actress from New York. She was a soap opera star from early radio. And she would become a big part of my life at the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn. A couple months later, I was rehearsing for the TAC Talent Contest on George Air Force Base. Well, I got lucky and I won the talent contest. Guess what? I was invited to be on the Fannie Dunnicliff show at the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn with some of my friends from the base. Fannie was a sweetheart. She asked me back a couple weeks later to be on her show, and I became kind of like a semi-regular. I was on at least once a month for almost a year. I even got to meet my first real celebrity. The first star I met was Mr. Ed the Talking Horse. He even posed with me out in the Apple Valley Inn parking lot that day. Needless to say, he didn't have much to talk about because he doesn't talk in front of anybody but Wilbur, and Wilbur wasn't there. One day after the show, I was informed I had a phone call. It was a lady named Irene Somerset from the Somerset House out in Hesperia, California, Main Street and Maple Avenue. They asked me if I'd be interested in working with the lady they had playing piano. And I said, well, sure. I met Marilyn Sherman. We added a drummer shortly after I started with her, and 5 nights a week we played at the Somerset House, and 5 days a week I worked on the bass at May 31st Supply Squadron. The next time I was invited to Fannie's show, I brought Marilyn with me. A few days before the show, I had called Fannie on the phone to ask her if it would be possible if she could get me an autographed picture of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. When we got to the show, the autographed picture was there, but boy was I surprised when it was handed to me by Dale Evans herself. What a nice lady that she would do this for me. About a month later, I did a show at the Apple Valley Inn with former golf pro Lloyd Mangrum. After the show, he invited me and the rest of the guests from the show over to his house for a drink. Lloyd lived right around the corner from the Apple Valley Inn, and I was standing in his family room listening to one of the guests play his Wurlitzer organ. When all of a sudden, across the room, a cowboy walked in. As he sipped his drink and talked to Lloyd at the bar, I kept wondering, how can I meet him? Well, he must have seen me staring at him because he started walking towards me. I did one of those things where you look over your left shoulder and your right shoulder and see who's behind you, who he possibly could be coming over to talk to. Well, it was me. First thing he said was, "Well, that's a beautiful organ, isn't it?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Your friend there plays very well." And I said, "Oh, he does." He then said, "My wife and I have one like this in our home." And I thought, yeah, your wife, Dale Evans. And then he turned to me and he said, "By the way, my name's Roy." That's how I met Roy Rogers. For the next year and a half, I was pretty busy. I was working 5 nights a week at the Red Log in Victorville and, of course, 5 days a week at the base. But in 1971, I finally got my discharge from the Air Force, and we put together a group called Freeway. For the next 7 years, I was on the road with Freeway. About twice a year, we got back to the desert and worked at the Hilton in Victorville. I always got back to the Apple Valley Inn when I was in town. I met Skip Young, who played Wally Plumstead on the television series Ozzie and Harriet. He had a morning show on KAVR radio. Skip invited me to be on his show, and from that day on, anytime I was in town, I was a guest on his program. In 1979, when the Freeway broke up, I was appearing nightly at the Apple Valley Inn for the first time. Once again, Marilyn joined me, and our drummer was Barry Brand. In 1980, I was named Honorary Mayor of Apple Valley, and we celebrated right there in the Apple Valley Inn in the Blossom Room. Right next door to the inn was Lions Park, and that's where we celebrated Powwow Days of Apple Valley. Here's Dale Evans and me at Powwow Days, and chili cook-offs, and we had a lot of fun with those too. My friend Dusty Rogers and I did a few shows together. And I even appeared with his mom and dad a few times. I even had a little fun with Roy in my show.
Kenny Rogers. You know Kenny Rogers, of course? Yeah. Roy Rogers' younger brother. Did you know that? You didn't? No, that's true. Roy Rogers is, of course, from up in this area. He lives up here now. And, you know, I've been up here for 12 years, and finally I got on talking terms with Roy Rogers. I'm so proud of it. Just the other day, I drove by his house, and there he was in his little yellow car there in the driveway, and he was getting out. So I backed my car up, I pulled in the driveway, honked my horn, I got out, and I said, "Roy, it's Randy." And Roy looked over at me and said, "Randy, get off my property." You don't know how it feels to be on talking terms with a man of that magnitude. Just doesn't it? I was a little kid enjoying him.
Well, I did know him a little bit better than that. At a baseball game, I sang the national anthem and Roy threw in the first ball. When he threw the first pitch, it kind of bounced into home plate. Of course, he was embarrassed. He was such a great athlete anyway, the way he could ride trigger or bowl or whatever he did. Athletically, he was very gifted. He explained to us that he had bursitis in his arm due to all the fake punches he threw in the movies and television shows during his fight scenes. Back at the Apple Valley Inn, I learned that a KAVR radio station was being taken over by a Los Angeles radio legend, Sweet Dick Whittington. I'd been a fan of Dick Whittington for many years. He was bringing a new all-talk format to KAVR radio, and as honorary mayor, I helped push the button to start the first day of all-talk radio on KAVR. One night, Dick Whittington came into the Blossom Room, and Jerry Hicks, the owner of KAVR Radio, introduced me to him. I told Dick what a big fan I was, and he invited me to see him the next day in his office. And he offered me a job. The next thing I knew, I was on a Saturday morning 4-hour talk show with Carrie Lynn Brown, one of the station's on-air personalities. Dick Whittington had the 6 to 10 drive time every weekday morning, followed by Skip Young from 10 to 2. Dick always had the reputation for taking entertainment out of the studio and right into the laps of the radio audience. The caller on his show would spark an idea, and he'd go with it. Like the time the Roy Rogers Museum moved to Victorville and the old building became a bowling alley. One morning, Dick had a man on the air that was a rancher who raised pigs. A few days later, we were all across the street from the Apple Valley Inn at the bowling alley, bowling for a pig. A week later, everyone was surprised when Skip announced that he was leaving KAVR and taking a job in Riverside. More surprising was that Dick asked me to take his place. Dick teamed me up with my lady and my future wife Linda, so we began our career as radio talk show hosts, and of course the fun that went with it. Battle of the KAVR Sexes, Shootout at Pebble Beach Park, and David Mandel, American Day. Hundreds of people gathered in the Apple Valley Inn parking lot to honor a man who called our show to complain that he was charged 6-cent sales tax for a shop towel rag that he did not receive when his car was serviced at a local car dealership. And a big finale. Silly, but lots of fun. Meanwhile, the actual part of our radio talk show was going on, and we were interviewing actor Victor French one day. He's best known as Mr. Edwards on Little House on the Prairie and Mark Gordon on Highway to Heaven. After the interview, Victor planned to have lunch with Roy Rogers. During the show, Roy called the station to say he was running late. Carrie Lynn Brown, our producer, answered the phone, and when he said, "This is Roy Rogers," Carrie thought it was a prank call and said, "Yeah, right, and I'm the Queen of England." After the show, we went out in the lobby and Roy asked, "Where's Carrie?" He opened the door to her office and said, "I'm Roy Rogers. You must be the Queen of England." I don't think Carrie has ever lived that one down. In 1982, the radio station went back to playing music, and I did a TV pilot for cable with my friend Dick Whittington. After that, I joined the Las Vegas review called LA Strut and spent the rest of the 1980s living in Nevada. In 1986, when the Las Vegas show was on hiatus, I brought the band to the Apple Valley Inn, and we appeared in the brand new Newton T. Bass Lounge.
This is the end.
And it was the end. The Apple Valley Inn closed in 1987. In 1990, I returned to the high desert and hosted a live television show from the San Bernardino County Fairgrounds. I interviewed Roy Rogers one day. Got a chance to tell him it all started for me at the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn. and how much of a hero he was to me. The King of the Cowboys and the Queen of the West. We lost Roy Rogers in 1998, and then Dale Evans passed away in 2001. They're laid to rest in Sunset Hills in Apple Valley. The Apple Valley Inn still stands today, but it's mostly commercial and it's rented out for special occasions. You can visit the history of the Apple Valley Inn in this building, the Apple Valley Legacy Museum, located on the grounds of the Apple Valley Inn. My friend, the Roy Rogers Apple Valley Inn.